pleasure now of welcoming a discussion between Shahryar Nashat, who some of you probably have met or at least have seen the work, as we have the luck of showing it right now at LUMA. And if you've not seen it, please, after the conference, go see and experience the work. But Shahryar Nashat is a Swiss visual artist based in Paris. He focuses on physical limits and the possibilities of extension. He treats digital and analog technologies as prostheses, as props or stand-in, and he had solo shows in institutions all around the world, the Art Institute of Chicago in 2023, the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 2020, and as I said, of course, at LUMA. And we'll have the extreme pleasure of having a discussion today as well with Emma McCormick-Goodhart, who is a post-disciplinary artist, writer, and researcher who experiments across media, timescales, and modes of practice. Interested in fathoming deep time developments of sensing, especially in sound and scent, alongside techno-sensory futures, she has presented works in a variety of institutions. To name a few, we have the Haus der Kult der Welt in Berlin, le Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris, between many others. And I also want to notify that her critical writing has been shared with Adidas Future Lab, and she recently founded a joint research studio with perfumer Barnabé Fillon. Voilà. Again, we're delighted to welcome the two of you for this conversation. But first, and we're going to watch the film.
There is an antagonism in my zone.
We're not in love, but I'll make love to you. You're not here, I'll save some for you.
I want to jump out
We're
of my
not in
skin.
love, but I'll make love to you. You're not here, I'll save some for you.
Emma, do you want to join me on stage?
We want to thank LUMA for inviting us here and to Shahryar. What I want for us to start in an observational mode, having just watched some minutes of this together. Now, granted, the video has been extracted from its natural or unnatural habitat as it exists downstairs. But when I encountered it during our visit yesterday for the first time in person, having seen its mirror version / life online, because there are several modalities within which it exists, which we will talk about. It struck me that Shahryar has, in this piece called Reverse Rorschach, created a kind of extracorporeal organ out of organs, and that it is both laryngeal and pelvic. It is a translation of wetware, of vitals. It may in some ways be a wet video, a techno-biofiction or a biotechno-fiction, and that while spending time within the installation itself, which is, very totally scenographic, I felt my own vitals adjust to the beat, of this prosthetic heart on the screen. I wonder if you can help guide us in understanding what goes into making this video and how it came into being.
Yes, thank you, Emma, for having this conversation with me. There's so many entry points into this work. I'm trying to, for the sake of this conversation that has a umbrella thematic, try to find the best entry point. I think the invitation came from LUMA when Simon Castel approached me to see if I wanted to work with computer engineers on a project that would use technologies that have not yet been really on the mainstream. And AI was one of them, and I was never really invited or approached or even maybe say interested in thinking of AI as a tool. But there was something alluring about the invitation was the level of craft of the engineers that we were working with, and so we started having brainstorming sessions about what I was interested in. And my brother is a psychologist in Geneva, and I think I've been a little bit malaxed into his thinking about different very experimental forms of therapy. He works a lot with teenagers and children. And one of the tools he's been using a lot is the Rorschach test, which is a Swiss psychiatrist in the 1920s in Bern who developed this method. His father was a painter, and very early on he became very attuned to the idea that colors and shapes have an impact on how people interpret things. And when he became a doctor in medicine and psychiatry, he started developing this what became a very, very powerful technique of diagnosing mental health. And I love my brother, and I think what he does is amazing. And so this LUMA invitation became kind of the perfect occasion to collaborate with him and LUMA and the team of the engineers that were coming from Google. And so to cut it short, what happened is that we developed this live, what we ended up calling self-portrait, which is using some data that is taken from the very, very simple, cheap smart watch that I wear, and the vitals that I am, kind of transmitting, but also a range of emotions that I can log throughout the day, are translated into images, and this is where artificial intelligence comes handy. But we worked with the protocol of Rorschach, which in the process we realized has uncanny parallels with how artificial intelligence generates images, in the sense that the most successful image will be created when you specify texture, when you specify depth, when you specify color, when you specify, of course, the subject that you want to be invented or depicted. And these are the criteria that Rorschach asked his patients to describe when they saw, like images that look like this, in order to understand their behavioral patterns and their mental health.
I love that you get at something of tactility in the process of teaching a machine to learn, and in some ways to sense with you or as a proxy for you. And it's amazing how it does carry your sensibility.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is that I think my resistance for AI was a little bit how artists who were at the forefront of this technology and this tool were working with it, because there was a little bit this tendency of being like, look, this has been done with AI, therefore you have to pay attention. And for me, it's only made sense to use it when as a technology, as a tool, as an artist, I could use it, or the same way any tool should be used by artists, should be used for an agenda that is personal or political or sociological. And so when the occasion came, and in a very speculative way, because we don't have the science to back up all of the claims of this artwork, but when the occasion came that there was this speculation on being able to make an artwork that doesn't need my conscious decision making all the time in order to create a formal an aesthetic experience, but yet it actually is the closest to me, because it proposes that it will dig into my subjectivity and my emotions in real time. So that's when it became interesting.
And there is a gradient of subjectivities, insofar as there are two modalities, and in one of those modalities if this is open information, can upload your emotions in real time, such that it is translated as image via the video, and another modality, which is a mirror version.
Yeah,
is that right?
Absolutely. So it was developed in a way that I was able to, throughout the time where the LUMA is open, I could choose from 8 emotions that we kind of outline with my brother as being as being able to cover the range of things that us human go through, I can tell you. So we had fear, boredom, anger, relaxation, delight, happiness, stress, and depression. And so to make it a little bit also more varied for the visual experience, we added a second type of logging, which had to do with my social interactions. So if I'm in a positive company, or if I'm having a fight with someone, this is also a way to kind of feed more information to the machine, the software that will create word prompts, that in turn will create what you see on the screen, which, if I were, as a Rorschach test taker, interpret this image, would come back to what I've logged in the speculative realm, yes, which we're very attached to, yes, actually, as, yes, artists. And the other modality is the use of a machine learning, which is predicting my emotions if I'm not active into logging throughout the day. So in this way that it's learning from the past behavior. Now the show is almost finished. It's almost 6 months. So when I'm not active, with my own portrait, then the machine is supposed to be very close to how I feel.
Do you feel any intimacy with the algorithm?
Sure.
Even by degrees?
I have to say yes. It's such a beautiful question. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think of it throughout the days, but it's true that when we were downstairs together and we were alone and we were watching it, I did feel that there was kind of a triangulation. Like there was the two of us and a version of me on the screen.
Yes.
And this is a very romantic way of describing it. But the fact that the heartbeat is very present throughout, like the soundtrack. And that this is a live reading, like it kind of makes me feel that there is an extension.
Yeah, it's a new genre of stethoscope. What's interesting is that it is totally rendered in real time, and so nothing is cued. Is that right? Though thousands of images were generated in advance of its making, from which it draws.
Yeah, nothing is cued, and in some way, like nothing will ever look the same. I worked with Ethan Brown, who's a friend of mine. He's a composer in Berlin, and I asked him, like, I said, would you score my life? Like, would you score my life through all these 8 types of emotions? And he came up with about like 5 or 6 soundtracks for each emotion. So the machine just picks randomly when an emotion is called, and then there is also we took lyrics from songs that have to do with social interaction. So there is so many parameters, and it's exponential the possibilities.
When we were visiting the piece, you said of the soundtrack that it always works, and I wonder whether we can think about how the machine perhaps has instincts. In that way, or if it perhaps has a kind of radiophonic imagination, which is how Octavia Butler described herself in conversation with Delaney at a conference at MIT in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, this goes, I think, a little bit back to the conversation about like how artists like work with tools, and there is a moment where I feel like as an artist you have to kind of take credit for some of the things that work, because for me it was also important that you're not totally lost when you enter the room, and it's a work that has to create affect, and it's a work that is built on transmitting affect. And I was a little bit, scared of the idea that it would be like, oh, this is what we did, and it's live, and go in and live the experience. But I wanted that there's a level of experience that you could have, that you could come up with, the mood that I'm in. So, as much as we can say that there are some relations that are universal, like colors or sounds, or at least like universal in a specific cultural context. We tried to create, for instance, color combinations or sounds that deal with major and minor chords and things like that would put you as close as possible to the emotion that is being portrayed.
And so in some ways you could anticipate its affect, you could design its affect, or you could tune its affect.
Yeah.
Does it archive itself?
It does not, because it's we had this conversation with LUMA, and we thought that the interesting part of the archive is actually the code that is generated, which can be reused. So in some ways, like the last 6 months of my life through this work are archived, but these images are not. And what's interesting is that you can call on the code again and recreate those 6 months. But the soundtrack, like the combinations of ink blots and sounds and stuff will be different. And this is a parti pris. I don't know how you say that in English. A what? a statement that we wanted to do, in the sense that the live is the live, and the data is archived, but the experience is unique to what is happening now.
Yeah. What's beautiful is that the proposition is really that it is the archive is in you, in an analog body, aside from the algorithmic code that will be retired, I suppose, at the end of January.
Yeah.
How will you feel when you retire it?
I mean, I
If you-
think
if you
LUMA
know.
people have lived with this work more than I
Yeah.
have, so maybe it's a question for them. I'm going to continue to live
Yeah.
with myself,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I don't know, it's a good thing.
Will you continue to wear the watch?
Yeah, we'll probably have abandonment issues, but
Yeah.
it's I didn't have a watch, so it was also like
Yes.
it's a very low it's not a big ask for myself to be wearing
Yes.
it. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
Is the watch technically the first wearable device that you've used within any of your work?
I mean, in some sense, and it would be interesting to have your take on the idea of like this extension of the body in your own work. But I've been interested in the idea of prosthesis as a kind of accompaniment to like our like human bodies, and but this idea of like an extension that is able to read and like communicate with something else. That's the first time I'm using. Yeah.
Yeah. It almost performs a kind of interior autoethnography or sensory autoethnography. I began to think about this, at least, because the aspect of sonography runs so deep throughout your works. And I actually feel like you make a kind of textural sci-fi, that you stage work in a science fictional mode that comes out of speculative design, which is not predicated upon narratives, but which gives or leaves much in the way of affordances to, say, think and sense with, that helps retune us as we inhabit your spaces. And as our friend, the curator Jordan Carter, once said of your work, there is a collapse between prop and what is propped.
Yeah, absolutely. And this idea of the prop, which a few years ago, in the art conversation, had to do with like objects that were surrounding beings. And there was a lot of philosophy, super interesting, and like the triple O and all of these things. Artists like have really massaged this in their work, and I think that more and more like technology that is connected to the machine has become like a natural prop for artists to be toying with, and in some ways, I don't know, like I want to say that, and again, maybe that's a very personal bias for technology that, at least in the world of artists, is most compelling when it's used as a device and a tool, but not as an end game. I think it's a dance, between how it serves the work, the artist, the agenda, and how it can be present in the conversation around the work.
Completely, because the around is also the technology. I would say, as is the analog body that inhabits any of these spatial spaces.
Yeah, and like Nicolas said, and like with Bahar's comment, I think the technology is part of our body, today. So as an artist, I don't feel I'm doing anything so kind of avant-garde or new when I say, look, we're in an era where kind of computing and like artificial intelligence are like at the proximity of what I can do, so therefore like this work is valid. Yeah.
I love to think about the voice as being a kind of ready-made technology that is available to us. and have also, in my own work, thought about sound as being a biological imaginary. But it may be useful even to sort of think about the register of sensation as itself being slightly science fictional, these intracellular processes that give us to sense in the first place. And I have felt within the environments that you create, you know, often flooded by pink light, etc., that we are in some kind of conditioning chamber or reconditioning chamber or training facility that could prepare us for a less or more than terrestrial future.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a reaction to, you know, like this idea of like a while ago, I did a little bit of research on how art has been photographed throughout like the decades, and you know, like you had the salon style, and you know, with the wooden floor, and then there was a moment where like you had gray walls to, you know, keep it a bit more like neutral, and then, you know, when this kind of like trend of architecture of galleries that became what we call the white cube, you know, like it was very washed out colors and stuff. So I think having like, you know, seen this kind of like flattening of how art is installed and experienced, I felt that I had to create an environment that was actually in a almost like you know, wanting to be very loud, and not in loud in the way to say like this is, you know, like this is a way to kind of take over this space just by, you know, changing the hue of the light, and it became something that I use once in a while.
And carpet and fabric as well, this sort of soft architectural layers, which do a lot to, you know, reconfigure acoustics. And
I mean, LUMA was cool because, you know, there is a little bit of a futurist feel in in the architecture, and I don't know if we can pull the image of the installation downstairs, but we're lucky enough that there was already like somehow the, you know, these kind of mesh triangle walls are part of the LUMA inside the building, so I didn't have to change it too much to make it kind of, you know, feel special.
Was the carpet already there, or was that?
No, the carpet we added.
Yeah.
But for sound and
But it is uncanny because it is very Shahryar. The
yeah,
aesthetic.
I don't know. I'm really into
Template of the
this
room.
mesh. I have to say,
Yes.
it's really
also the way
beautiful.
that sound palpably comes from behind the walls. Or at
Yeah,
least
this
that
was
my
the
experience.
advantage of being able to modify the space.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, there's a feeling of camouflaged kind of like technology that sometimes is interesting to use, and because, you know, like the heartbeat is so present in the work, I think it was an advantage that we could not locate the source of where the sound comes from, but just the image.
It's a little like the room itself begins to beat.
Yeah, and these perceptual fields, and I think it would be a good segue also to you know, like to ask you a little bit about how you think of these questions of like, you know, like perception in your work, which are very important.
And that's why I think, or I know why I am in so many ways drawn to your work. We actually met when I was writing a piece for Frieze, a review of Shahryar and Adam Linder's joint commission for MoMA in 2019. And I was, I think, still in draft moment when we met and became friends, and have since collaborated, including to record voiceover, in fact, for a video installation at Gladstone. But
we did a radio show for your program as well.
Yes. But when
Perception.
yes, exactly.
Tell
Okay.
us more.
Just small side note: when I write criticism, I do so because I feel like it can be and should perhaps be a sort of speculative fiction as well, or is always a kind of speculative fiction, and am, in terms of thinking about perception and sensing sort of writ large, continue to be engaged by it because it does feel to be a kind of cosmological imponderable, as Elizabeth Grosz writes. We presuppose our senses, but then it's wild to imagine how we come to sense in the first place, you know. And I think that the sort of infrabiological processes remain rich to me, and that's why I enjoy working with sound and scent more recently, which are difficult materials to work with because they operate within the molecular register, and one has to find ways to broadcast them within space. But then so much can be done to tune them and to make them subtle or overwhelming, and it just, that doesn't run out.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about this thing that we have in common, that we work with soft materials, and when you mentioned that, you're interested in scent, it's like the most like direct kind of like moment for me to think about this idea of softness in materials, and as something that, like as you see when you pulverize scent, it's this kind of microparticles that just like, circulate in the air,
and then is affected by our own motions, say within a space, if we are in the same room.
So would you say that the moment where the work becomes alive or is active is the moment where it actually enters someone like olfactory system?
Yes. And then, of course, there is the question of the archive of the work, if there even can be one. I mean, I tend to carry a scent sample with me, and in fact have one in my pocket now, only because that remains the best way to communicate a work such as that. The one that I have in my pocket is a cave-oriented scent that was derived. I created it with Barnabé Filion for a personal commission at Nottingham Contemporary in a show. Thematic show around the subterranean imaginary, but we ended up evolving the scent from actual skin contact macerations of substances including moon milk, which is a microbial secretion that was foraged from Mount Pilatus, a cave in Switzerland, brought by way of a female fishmonger who vacuum packed our samples to Barnabé's lab in Paris, and to which we added perfumers' alcohol and let evolve. But it was technically still living as it macerated, and you could tell it was a little like a mother culture that was still bubbling. Anyway, there was a mere week to let it evolve, but the scent notes that did emerge from those macerations were what guided the scent as it came together. And such absolutes as wet clay, distilled in India, which is extremely moist in smell, were added to its base, as well as cicada exoskeletons. So I was thinking about notions of molt and of a cave, if it could molt its voice, what it would sound like.
Would you like to circulate the scent into the space?
Yeah, well, I can spritz,
Wow.
ceremonially spritz it. Did stage a performance actually in which one of the two diffusers that diffused scent within the gallery performed as itself and was mic'd, and so feedback upped and
Go for it.
Feels like a ceremony
increased
now.
and decreased.
It's like a blessing.
The first,
Merci.
such an infiltration right into the...
Emma, if I may jump in, there is something very interesting in this conversation when we asked Shahryar, because we wanted to dig into your work, Shahryar, and you said that you wanted to have that discussion with Emma. And notably, one of the very interesting things is that your two works are kind of out of gravity somehow. Do you think you can there is an out of gravity feeling in the two of them, either through your installation or through your subaquatic well? Can you talk to us a bit about that, maybe?
I'm thinking,
maybe
well, the
not.
Subterranean, it's both the subaquatic and the subterranean, which I feel, are one of a continuum, but again, liquid environments or environments that connect to sort of deep time bioevolutionary lineages, when we were kinds of fish, even actually the time that all of us spent in amniotic fluid, in the womb, which is a zero gravity environment, the fact, the idea that even that our sense of hearing is the first to develop, the very experience of pregnancy, which is one that I have not lived, but is fairly insane, is totally science fictional, is totally techno-scientific. I'm at work on a birthing-oriented scent that is connected to that, because what I learnt is that actually amniotic fluid, that breast milk smells like amniotic fluid, and so there is this feedback loop that helps induce an infant, to echolocate its way to a breast to feed. And that human milk itself is bioactive tissue. It is basically an organ. Anyway, these are wild developments to me, and I think can be communicated, perhaps semi-abstractly by way of something like scent or a sound piece. Made a sound piece with the vocalist Jessica Kenny that was diffused alongside the scent at Nottingham. That attempted to fathom the pre-verbal worlds of, say, an infant or of cave environments.
Shahryar?
I was trying to think of a good answer. I think the question of gravity is maybe coming from, goes back a little bit to the amniotic, in the sense that I've had a few conversations also with Emma when we were downstairs yesterday, how she felt that her heartbeat wanted to align with the heartbeat of the room, and I hesitated to use the the heartbeat. Like somebody was saying, it's kind of corny to to have it always present, and it kind of is, but there is there's something about rhythm that is very corporeal and human, and I think this is where this connection happens to kind of maybe it does create a space where we are less in reality, and maybe where we could imagine that laws of gravity are a little bit kind of skewed.
Merci. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Are there any questions or comments or things you want to share with us? Vasilis?
Thank you, this was great. I just wanted to ask if what we were watching is actually the work in real time, because it was interesting to see how it changes the beats per minute as you were answering the questions, and how it changed while you were asking the questions, or when it was towards the end of the conversation, and particularly when you mentioned the cosmological imponderable. It was a very strange sign that showed up, so I was wondering if it was just me projecting that this is real, or
no, it is real. It is real. My heartbeat right now is 50. Yeah, pretty much. It is real. It's maybe again in this idea of how the work multiplies. It's not exactly the image that you will see downstairs, but it's the same emotions that are being prompted by the machine. Yeah.
So if you want to know how you feel, we can go downstairs and see the piece on the second floor. Emma, you want to say?
I have one question. Is there any slippage in time, though, when we say real time? Right? Because...
No.
No. Amazing.
It's a perfect machine, like our heart. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.